Today is Wednesday, April 27th, 2011. I'm Matthew T.G.
I'm Heath Mullican.
I'm Steve Stanley.
And I'm Tony Casey. Welcome to the Techology Show, a weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between. The world's only user-antagonistic podcast. This is episode 105. Good morning, gentlemen.
Cinco.
Hey, just props to our producer, Matthew T.G. We've had all kinds of glitches this morning. He's worked through them.
Haven't got them all ironed out.
Well,
just about.
You're doing a great
We've
job.
Had burned up USB hubs. We've had failed Skype calls.
Crazy.
It is.
Thanks to everyone who joined us for the podcast, the special podcast on Monday with Todd Burpo. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're number one on the New York Times podcast list.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about that. We gave away a Kindle edition of Heaven is for Real, and then also 2 paperback Heaven is for Real, and we said that this morning we would announce the winners.
Yeah,
so Master TG.
Nobody's called in with a question for the Kindle edition, so it's still up for grabs.
No way.
Anybody that wants it can have it. All you got to do is leave a question or a comment about what you heard during that show. You can call us at 3049 Techology. Leave your voicemail there. So it's still up for grabs, but we do have our 2 hard copy winners, Tim Kirkpatrick.
Yay.
And we're unsure about this one.
Okay.
It's a Buchanan.
All right.
It's signed Scott Buchanan.
But
the email address is Sandy Buchanan.
that's his wife.
Yeah.
We're sending it to Sandy.
I think so.
That's right, because you can't just hijack
No,
her email.
Absolutely
That's
not.
right.
It came from hers. It must be her.
So Buchanan's, Kirkpatrick's, give us. Make sure you send us your address, and those books will get out in the mail today. And then also, I understand you've been doing research for Dustin for Steven Sheets. There's something he's supposed to be mailed. You've been checking with the U.S. Postal Service.
Yes, it has been
trying to find out what the problem
is. It has
is.
been found, and
Okay.
they've found the package. It just got tucked away in a little corner of the
Okay.
post office, but they pulled it out, dusted it off, and it is on its way as well.
That's great. I think the problem is that USPS has been storing this stuff at TG's house, and they didn't even tell him.
Well, here's the thing. Just so Steven knows, Newman has been fired from the post office. He will no longer be handling. He will no longer be handling our deliveries.
Too funny. Hey, listen, we have 3 guests we want to welcome to the show this morning, so let me introduce them to you. First, we want to welcome Dr. Wayne Schmidt. Wayne's a 1979 graduate of Indiana Wesleyan University. He holds a master's degree from Calvin Theological Seminary and a doctorate of ministry degree from Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. After college, Wayne joined Dick Wynn and founded Kentwood Community Church in the greater Grand Rapids, Michigan area. He served that church for over 30 years, leading it to become increasingly multi-ethnic as it grew to over 2,600 in weekend attendance and eventually planted 10 churches, which in turn gave birth to 4 granddaughter churches. In 2010, Wayne began his role as vice president for Wesley Seminary at Indiana Wesleyan University, giving strategic and operational leadership to the seminary, which is less than 2 years old. Wayne has been married for over 32 years to Jan, who is professor at Taylor University. They together are blessed with 3 children and 2 granddaughters. Also, we want to welcome Joanne Solis Walker. Joanne serves as Director of Latina Education at Wesley Seminary and Indiana Wesleyan University, where they've launched the first online Master of Divinity in Spanish in the nation. Mm-hmm. She is also an adjunct professor of spiritual formation at Seminario Wesley. Joanne is pursuing a Ph.D. in Organizational Leadership and Development at Regent University and has a Master's of Divinity from Asbury Theological Seminary. Woo! She is an ordained minister of the Wesleyan Church. She is married to Reverend Dan Walker, and they have a 5-year-old, Adriana Nicole. The Walkers reside in Florida, where they actively serve as part of a leadership team at Nomad Community Church, a 1-year church plant. And we also want to welcome Reverend Frankie Rodriguez. Frankie is an ordained minister in the Wesleyan Church. Is also, what year did you graduate from BJU?
2007.
2007 BJU grad. He is currently enrolled at Wesley Seminary, where he is pursuing the Master of Divinity. He also has the distinction of being part of the first all-Spanish MDiv cohort at Wesley Seminary. Frankie pastors the Iglesia Wesleyana El Camino in Greenville, South Carolina. He is married to Daisy, and together they are blessed with a son whose name is Christian.
That's my second favorite church name, El Camino.
Thank you for that, Heath. Good.
The first one is Heath
Good.
Church.
Could someone keep a list of Heath's favorites?
Hey,
Yes.
Welcome all of you to the show today.
Welcome. Bienvenidos.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Wayne, we're going to begin with you. First, I want to apologize to our listeners. We're having a little trouble pulling in Joanne's video feed. We're hoping that might come online here, but you have a picture there. You'll be able to see her in a moment and hear her voice. Wayne, we're going to begin with you. Let's begin by asking just the basic questions. What, why not? Why now? What is Wesley Seminary?
Well, the short answer to that is it's an attempt to be a revolutionary way to prepare ministers. And that's reflected in a lot of things that were done in the innovative design of the seminary, all of which were done before I ever showed up. So I don't take any credit for it, but glad I get to be part of it.
Sure.
One of the things that really let me mention just a couple. One is that the various disciplines that you pursue in a seminary, history, theology, Bible, along with the practical courses, often those are separate, and so people pursue those, and then you hope at the end they all kind of figure out how to put those together. And one of the fun things we're doing here is that all of our core courses are team taught and team designed, and all of those disciplines are integrated in the course. So we put the onus on the professors to figure out how it fits together rather than just giving it to the students and have them figure out how it fits together.
Nice.
So last Saturday we spent the day planning our last course on congregational relations, and it was fun to see the historians and the theologians and the Bible people, struggle with, okay, how do those disciplines come to bear on the subject of effective relationships in a congregation? So that integrated approach to our curriculum has been a huge blessing for us.
One of the things that education has been criticized for a lot of times is what we call the silo effect. You have these different disciplines, they never talk to one another, and it sounds like you guys have been very intentional of making this go across discipline so that we're just integrating all of this.
Yeah, and that's a battle you always have to fight because these individuals have expertise. They're given their life to these disciplines. They obviously feel very deeply about them, but one of the things I love about the team here is it's very relational. I'd heard before coming to seminary that professors tend to be introverted. They come in the morning, close their door, you don't see them until they leave at night, and that is just not the nature of this team. And yet, even with that, it's an ongoing commitment and even struggle at times to make sure that integration takes place so those silos don't develop.
Yeah. Two questions here, just going to marry them together. Why did Indiana Wesleyan go down this path? And then also, why now? Because I remember at the time when this idea was being floated, I had started working on a PhD, and I know people at Asbury Seminary and other institutions. And at the time Indiana Wesleyan was thinking about this, part of the conventional thinking was, man, this is not a good time. And because a lot of seminaries were actually experiencing decline in enrollment. So kind of explain just the genesis of all this.
Yeah, and again, my background's in the local church, so some of those statistics and so on were new to me. Really, why now? Why did it happen? It's because Dr. Smith here, God put it on his heart, and he worked with the board, and the board was very receptive and supportive, and they decided they wanted to make it happen. And I've heard the stats often, but I've not been able to verify them, so I'll just put that disclaimer on it. That in the Wesleyan church, for instance, 85% of Wesleyan pastors have not had the benefit of seminary education. So our wasn't to design a seminary that would add to those who are already serving very well the 15%. We were just saying, what are the reasons? And we again and again ran across issues like affordability, accessibility, the practical nature of it, and that's what really led us to begin this seminary. And the response has been just a real blessing.
I think that probably what's happened here is you have a whole segment now of ministers who are given an opportunity that they would not have otherwise had. Why don't you talk a little bit about the format of the seminary?
Sure. Part of making it practical is that the ministry context they're in, the local church or the ministry setting, that's their living laboratory. And there's an attempt to make all of the assignments relate to that living laboratory. So for them to stay in their ministry context is a huge factor in affordability, so they don't have to pick up, move, leave their jobs if they're bivocational, or leave their ministry employment. And that means that rather than asking them to come to us, our commitment is to come to them. And so that's why we're primarily online, so that they can stay in their ministry context, and that makes it affordable and accessible for them. And so based on those factors, there's been a great response of, and this is particularly close to my heart, of people who thought seminary was impossible, or they thought they'd missed their window of opportunity. And so the vast majority of our students, Frankie's one of our younger students, most of our students are later 30s, 40s, 50s. I think even in our Spanish language MDiv that recently launched, Frankie was the youngest, and we had him all the way up to, what was it, 65, Frankie, or something? I mean, it's just a broad range. That's exciting to serve people who maybe thought they weren't going to get the opportunity.
Yeah. So you talk about mainly you're bringing the education to them. How often do they have to come on campus?
Well, for the Master of Arts, which is a 36 credit hour degree, they come to campus once, and that's for a basic orientation at the beginning. The rest of it's online. For the Masters of Divinity degree, which is the degree that Frankie's involved in, they come to campus about 2 weeks a year. Now, I want to put the disclaimer on that is right now they come to campus 2 weeks a year, but one of the things we're exploring is what if they don't come here to Marion, Indiana? Maybe they do that the first time, but then subsequently they go to other places, either nationally or internationally, for the on-site intensive component of their work. So the way it turns out, our Masters of Divinity is 75 hours, credit hours, and about 2/3 of those hours are online, and the other third are taken in these 1 week intensives, about 2 weeks a year over the 4 years.
So if I'm an ordained minister in a Wesleyan church, this sounds attractive to me. What kind of pricing am I looking at?
You know, this is, again, I'm so proud of our university for stepping up, and our denomination, again, in the Wesleyan church. Right now, our tuition is $381 a credit hour, which is about in the mid-range of seminaries, maybe on a little bit of the lower to the mid-range. We think that represents the great value we have here. But the university for Wesleyan pastors has committed to an immediate 50% scholarship. So that drops it from $381 to about $190. Our denomination, through its loan grant program, will commit another $90 a credit hour for those who are part of the North American General Conference. That means it's about $100 a credit hour, and when you times that by the 75, you're talking about a Master's of Divinity that's less than $8,000 in tuition. That's about $2,000 a year. And that makes it affordable, again, for a lot of people who don't want to go into debt heavily, or they need something that's more manageable. So we're excited about that. And again, that's opened up the doorway for many people.
Yeah, that is crazy low in a great way.
Yeah.
But before we turn to Joanne, one more thing. In the pre-show, you were talking to us about a class that's going to be an MDiv class that's actually going to take place down here in the greater Atlanta area at 12 Stone. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we're really excited about that. One of the commitments we have is to form partnerships with what we call teaching churches and teaching districts. Again, we want our students to have the privilege of being immersed in healthy missional churches. And because of a long-term relationship, we go back to when we were kids with Kevin Myers, the lead pastor there at 12 Stone. we began to work with him and Dan Ryland, who will be the professor of record there. He's the executive pastor. And on June 1 to 7, we're going to hold the church laboratory at 12 Stone, and it'll be an accredited class through Wesley Seminary. But if you look at those dates, it starts on a Wednesday, ends on a Tuesday, and that means they're there over the weekend. So they'll get to experience all of the ministry activity and so on. And we're excited, too, because it's not only for our students, but we opened it up to a limited number of auditors and so on who may want to say, hey, this seminary thing, stick my toe in the water, might be a way to do it. So, we're thrilled about that, and it's probably the beginning of a longer-term relationship with 12 Stone and with other potential teaching churches and districts.
Dr. Schmidt, you just mentioned about the auditing, and you guys kind of did a news release about the cost of auditing the classes for Wesleyan pastors. Can you just talk a little bit about that? Because that is a great appeal to me, like you said, just to get my feet wet.
Yeah. I remember when I did my seminary work, which I did alongside of ministry, I found that pretty intimidating to think, okay, going to seminary and being in ministry, can I pull this off? And so we recognize that people might want to experience a class just to see what it's like, if they can do it, and so on. So the audit, they sign up for $25, and then it's $25 a credit hour. So for a 3-hour class, credit hour class, you're talking about $100 of investment. Obviously, you don't have to do all the homework. You don't have all the assignments graded and all that type of thing. It's really an opportunity to set in, learn from the professor, learn from the other students in the class, and see if maybe seminary is right for you. And so that 12 Stone is one of the electives that we make available that way, but there are others as well. But we want to give people that on-ramp if that's helpful to them.
Also, one of the questions in the chat room is there any chance in the future of maybe some focus on urban studies and U.S. missions?
Yeah, in fact, we are partnering with the CCDA, the Christian Community Development Association. They are here in Indianapolis in October, and we're doing a class as part of a consortium of seminaries and educational institutions. That'll be a wraparound of the CCDA. And then we're looking at a future elective with Alvin Sanders, who is not only he's the Director of Reconciliation for the Evangelical Free Church. He's not only a noted thinker in the areas of reconciliation and race relations, but also an urban church planter. So with the denomination, Wesleyan Church specifically, in its urban urgency emphasis, but more broadly, many denominations are feeling called to do something about the urban areas. Mm-hmm. We feel like we want to be part of that process and equipping. And again, we want it to be an immersive sort of experience. So, for instance, the elective with Alvin, we're talking about being in Cincinnati so that the students are actually interacting with people who are doing urban ministry. And so we think that's an advantage.
Can you give the dates for the 12 Stone class again?
Yeah, the 12 Stone class, it's called Church Laboratory at 12 Stone, and it's June 1 through 7. And again, there's going to be a limit. There's been a great response to the class, and so at some point we may need to limit enrollment, both for auditors and students. So I just encourage people, if they're feeling prompted to do it, to hop in pretty quickly. And Dan Ryland will be the main host, but several of the 12 Stone team from the various ministry areas will be speaking. So I think it's going to have broad application no matter what a person's role is within a church setting.
All right, let's change gears here a little bit. I want to go over to Joanne. Joanne, talk to us a little bit about the Spanish-speaking MDiv. How did this come about? And again, why did Indiana Wesleyan decide to go down this path?
That's a great question. I don't want to repeat what Dr. Schmidt has already stated, but truly the vision starts with Dr. Smith. And part of what I believe was such a God-appointed decision was to bring on board Wayne as vice president of the seminary. And if you know a little bit about his background, you know his commitment to diversity and his passion for all people. And having that so clearly defined mind in his heart and in his approach to ministry that paved the way for a Spanish Master's of Divinity to come on board. And what a decision it was. Allow me to say that I'm so blessed and privileged to be a part of this team, and that it's wonderful to work in an institution that sees the need and that responds to the need all at the same time. Could you imagine how innovative is that idea?
Yeah.
But really, this is God's timing. The Hispanic population within the United States continues to increase. And while this was not a decision that was based upon the Hispanic U.S. census and the growth of Hispanics in the U.S., God's timing is perfect. And having placed that vision and that desire in Dr. Smith and Dr. Schmidt, and therefore creating a platform at the seminary to be able to do this, really combined itself with the increase that is happening in the U.S. with Hispanics. And therefore, there's no other program in the U.S. offering a Spanish Master's of Divinity online. There are various institutions that have a residential program, but it requires for you to either pack up your bags and move on site, or to travel 5-6 times throughout the year, which is not always as convenient. So being able to launch a program that is not only in Spanish, and let me clarify what that means for us. We're not talking about a translation of a curriculum that's already in existence. We're talking about contextualization and redesigning of those areas that are not pertinent to what the Hispanic church needs. So that's an important difference in comparison to some of the other programs that sometimes are offered, which are just merely translated. But we realize that the need is much more for just language, that we're trying to equip pastors to be able to effectively respond to the needs of their community.
So where are you at right now with the Spanish-speaking MDiv?
Well, we launched a pilot class in March, the class that Frankie is a part of. And with that cohort, they'll follow through. They'll continue to be our pilot class until they finish. And in August, we have open enrollment now, and we launched the official, for lack of a better word, class in August. That cohort begins.
All right. I'm going to ask you this question, and just hold on to it for a moment, Joanne, but just kind of in a moment here, I want you to give us what your vision is, what you see for the future of the Spanish-speaking MDiv. Let's turn to Frankie for a moment, because, again, Frankie is part of the very first cohort. Frankie, so tell us just about your experience so far.
Well, I've been real excited to be a part of it from the very beginning, and working alongside of Miss Walker and the university, just to see how they have branched out and just kind of made me, and I think those that have been studying with me, feel welcomed right there at Wesley Seminary, Seminario Wesley. And we felt that from the moment we came on campus. We felt that from even way before even being there, just through the way they contacted us, and the way that we've been able to ask questions and get answers, and never been a problem. So I've been real blessed just to be able to be a part of this.
Yeah.
One of the questions in the chat room for Joanne is this Hispanic program geared mainly toward U.S. Spanish-speaking pastors, or will there be kind of an outreach to pastors in Central America and other areas where Spanish is the main language?
That's the beauty of this, because the program is primarily online. It doesn't matter where the student is located geographically. It's available to them. And we're in conversation with Ecuador, with Panama, with Colombia right now, just exploring cohorts in that area.
Nice.
And so the beauty of it is that, of course, we won't ask them to have to come here to the United States. We'll just go there and design cohorts that are specific to Puerto Rico, Colombia, Panama, wherever the Lord, leads us. That's the beauty of this.
So I assume this flows right into the whole vision thing, Joanne.
It does, and that is our vision. Our desire is to make this available, accessible to every Hispanic pastor that has been longing for this opportunity to be theologically trained. And so, I'm really right now, to be honest, we're just trying to follow the footsteps that Jesus has already paved. He's moving a whole lot faster than I can move at this point. Because of the nature of our program, then we're getting calls from different Latin American countries with the interest of being able to offer this. Part of the vision includes different denominations, not only the Wesleyan Church. Of course, our commitment to the Wesleyan Church is true, and we have done and will continue to do our best to offer our Wesleyan students the opportunity to be able to be a part of the program. But in addition to that, we are seeking to be in relationship with other denominations to also offer them the opportunity to offer their pastors theological training.
Good. Frankie, for you, I mean, what does it mean that you have this opportunity through the online, that you don't have to do the travel?
Well, it's helped me in a huge manner, because I wouldn't be able maybe to go just pick up and leave because of finances, because of my responsibilities locally, my family, and other things. And so just to be able to do this right where I'm at and while I'm in ministry, and not only just studying while I'm in ministry, but studying something that is practical to what I am doing in ministry has been so awesome. Even in just the last couple of weeks, as we've been working through some things, I realized, wow, this is stuff I can implement in my local ministry with the Hispanic community right now. So I've been blessed by that.
Yeah. One thing, I'll speak from a district point of view. I'm an assistant DS here in South Carolina, and so with Frankie, if Frankie had to pull up roots and go to a seminary and study, I mean, physically move the location, I mean, that would impact our district negatively, because Frankie is very much involved with the Hispanic ministries here, and he's strategic in the Hispanic Council. And so I think that this is just another example of how there's a sense in which Indiana Wesleyan, by doing this, is really partnering with ministry and with districts and the Wesleyan Church. Yeah, you're gonna say something?
No, I'm just gonna say, I mean, just to echo that. Yeah, they're making it very real and very viable to us, and very attractive, and it gets me excited. I mean, because I've only been removed from the classroom for about 4 years, I guess, but there's still that hunger and that desire to learn, and I don't want to lose that, and to have that available. Wow, what a great resource and gift.
So I asked this to each of you, Joanne, Wayne, I don't care which one of you field this one, but so if there's someone listening or going to download the podcast later and listen, what needs to be the first step for them if they're interested in enrolling at Wesley Seminary?
Well, they can go to our website. It's just wesley.indwes.edu. That's a straightforward way. I want to mention that in our admissions department, we have bilingual capabilities. So if someone's calling in and it works best for them to communicate in Spanish, we can service them in that way. That's also true with our seminary office here. We're very blessed to have a very committed Latina staff member. And so whether it's in Spanish, when they go to the website, there's an opportunity to access that information. That'd be a great first step.
All righty. You got anything to add to that, Joanne?
We do have a direct Spanish website as well for those who don't handle the English as well. You could go to seminario.indwes.edu de educación.
All right, we're getting Frankie to write that down so we can be sure to get it on our website. Frankie understood every word of that.
I'm sure he did.
We've got a couple of people in the chat room who are students with you guys, and they said that the whole process of application and the classes, you guys are just getting 5-star ratings all across the board here.
Yeah, sounds like people want any more scholarships. Joanne, could you repeat that for us, please?
Sure. It's seminario.indwes.edu.
All right. I want to switch gears here and kind of go off of the whole seminary thing. I wanted to take advantage of having you here today, Wayne. I was sad back in March when Dick Wynn passed away, and For my generation and older in the Wesleyan Church, many know who Dick Wynn was, but for a lot of younger people, they don't know who he was. And I wonder if you could just kind of introduce him to our listeners and just talk about this man for just a little bit.
Yeah, Dick Wynn, there was a day, and I'm thankful this day is passing, where the Wesleyan Church tended to be very removed from any contact with greater evangelical community, the greater church. Dick Wynn was an early pioneer. Even though he grew up completely in the Wesleyan Church, he became very engaged in Youth for Christ, went on to become national president of Youth for Christ, and then head of the Asia Pacific arena of Youth for Christ, living in Singapore. And so here was a Wesleyan kid who went to Owasso Bible College in Michigan, who went on literally to lead this national parachurch organization and then to increase its worldwide influence. And Dick, I had the privilege of working under his leadership for 2 years when the church began. Very unique arrangement. He was part-time because he was still full-time with Youth for Christ, and I was his full-time assistant. And I tell you, those 2 years of being mentored by him were amazing, in part just because he expanded so greatly my view of the church and my view of the world.
Yeah, he just a great guy. Would take this opportunity to encourage our listeners, if you don't know him, do some searches online, talk to people who knew him. And Wayne, I think that you've given us a really good taste here. He really was ahead of his time, and he was headed where we needed to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Dick was probably the most energetic person I knew, and I even at the end when his diabetes ravaged his body and he had lost both his legs and so on, he's still a hard guy to keep up with. Amazing. At the funeral, Jay Kessler was the main presenter of his message, the funeral that took place in Michigan. There's another one, the memorial service that took place at Northland Church, and that's all online if the listeners want to tune into that. But someone said that funeral was a combination of family reunion and leadership seminar. And that really sums up Dick's life. He was such a relational person, and yet so committed to evangelism, so committed to worldwide movement of God that he just was on fire to see the kingdom expand.
Yeah, and he didn't just know about leadership, he exemplified leadership.
There you go. And like all leaders, not perfect. He had strong strengths. He had other areas he was always working on, but that was the key. He was always working on those areas. And I looking back now, I couldn't appreciate it fully at the time. I was a 21-year-old kid when I started working for him, but he was such an empowerer with such high expectations, and yet could do that with the spirit of a mentor. And that was so key for me to see a leader who not only was strong himself, but always trying to strengthen those around them, always trying to be sure they had a place at the table, given the opportunities to grow their gifts, and it was a blessing, absolutely.
Yeah, he was a somebody that was content to be a nobody in all the proper ways. Yeah.
And very humble person. At the end, here he is, 70 years of age, diabetes, wheelchair-bound, and he's the chief of staff of Northland Church in Orlando, which is this worldwide impacting local church. And yet he was very content just to work in mentoring and developing ministry plans with others. Didn't need to be in the spotlight. Could step into it if that served the cause, but it was all about whatever serves the cause. That's the role I'll play.
All right. Well, thank you so much for just kind of giving us a window into that man's life. Joanne, we want to thank you for joining us today. Is there any place our listeners can find you online?
Yes. My email address is joanne.soliswalker@indwest.edu. All
right. And Wayne, any place our listeners can find you online?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. My email is wayne.schmidt@indwest.edu. So any of those work, and love to connect.
All right. Well, blessings to both of you.
Hey,
and
we do have one more comment in the chat room.
Okay,
We
go
just
ahead.
got to bring out. Everybody thinks that Dr. Schmidt must be playing Xbox Live too, based on that headset. So they're wondering if they can get your Xbox Live user account name so that they can play.
I put this on just for you guys.
Love it. Thanks so much, Joanne and Wayne, for joining us today. Blessings upon you. And if we get requests, we'll send them on to Indiana or to Wesley Seminary.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you very much.
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. Well, it's great having them. Just really loved the comments that Wayne had about Dick Wynn. I don't know. Well, Steve, you're very familiar with Dick Wynn. I don't know. For you, Heath, how much you know about Dick Wynn or knew about him.
No, very, very little. Coming from a non-Wesleyan background, I just remember Dr. Schmidt kind of sharing the story at the gathering, and just some great stuff, man. Yeah. What an awesome opportunity. I think about Dr. Schmidt, what a great legacy he left at Kentwood, the transition that they went through, and then now to be here at the forefront. And it's so great to see a Wesleyan entity on the cutting edge, at the forefront. And
let me tell you this. Now, Wayne was being very humble there when Kentwood Community, when Dick had this idea about starting Kentwood Community Church, this was the condition, only if Wayne comes on.
Wow.
So, and Wayne was coming fresh out of Indiana Wesleyan University. Yeah. So Dick saw something in Wayne early on. Mm-hmm. And so the deal was, and so Dick's doing this part-time. Wayne is the full-time guy. And for 2 years, he mentors Wayne.
But here's the deal. You couldn't do that nowadays. Nowadays, it's like, oh, well, you can't go plant a church. You've got to go get, and it's, I don't know, like, I wish we had more of that. I wish we had more Dick Wynns to get guys right out of college.
Maybe
to
that
mentor.
Spontaneity of doing that. Yeah, there is a very long process, and there's reasons that that process set up. But it is like you say there, Heath. There are occasions when wouldn't it be great if you could jump like that?
Well, I think that will be recovered through this seminary process. This seminary is crafted towards innovation and continue. I like the fact that it doesn't have the feel of an ironclad institution, but it is, here I'll use an overused word, missional, in the sense that it's ready to adapt. Yeah. It's ready to change so that it can be on top of whatever wave it needs to drive forward.
Well, and one of the criticisms has been this, that you have the church as an institution, it's over here. You have the academy, and it's over here. And the two are not talking to one another. Right. And what Wesley Seminary is doing, especially with this 12-stone class,
that's great,
is to say we are getting the academy and the church together.
Right.
And like you said, I think out of that setting then can come more spontaneity, and especially people who see peers to say, we do see God's hand on you to do this. Mm-hmm. And I think with Dick, this is what he sees in Wayne.
Yeah.
That God's hand is upon him, that he has the graces and the gifts, and so I'm going to do this, but only if.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it was a good marriage, wasn't it?
It really was.
It's produced some great kids in terms of brain children and other churches being spawned.
10 daughter churches. Yeah, 10 daughter churches. Yeah. 4 granddaughter churches.
Mm-hmm. Now, wait. Now, 12-Stone is a daughter of Kentwood, right?
Yep.
And for people who don't know what 12-Stone is, it used to be Crossroads Community Church. It's near Atlanta. They had 15,000 people for their Easter services.
He said 18,770 something. I don't know what it was.
But the best number is over 1,000 receiving Christ. That's
1,300 and some came forward.
That's amazing. Yeah. And to have the opportunity to be at a weekend service there, I might give my heart to Christ.
No.
Yeah, I'm pretty skeptical about that, Heath. All right. Well, let's move on here to
Download of the Week.
All right. If you are on a PC, our download of the week is Glare Utilities. This is something that is, as always, we don't do anything unless it's been vetted by CNET. And so the free version of this, they give 4 stars. They give 4.5 stars to the paid-for version. And also Revision 3's Techzilla has offered this as a recommendation. Really, it is just a utilities tool that brings a lot of things together and just helps manage your PC better and brings it up in just a module where you can see you have different tabs and you can see the registry. It keeps the registry clean. It fixes shortcuts. The startup manager, it cleans it up as well. Sometimes you have temporary files that need to just come off. It takes care of that for you. And it also is a spyware remover. So what it's doing is taking a number of utilities and bringing them under one roof. And so, again, this is one that we recommend.
Yeah, just don't go to their website and click the banner that says, before you continue, run a free scan for Windows errors via their sponsored link. It's up there on the screen. Okay. Don't click that.
Also, too, let me tell you something about this. Well, I don't recommend something unless I download it and try it. And one of the things I didn't like about this is when you install the program, it automatically has checked, Yahoo as your utility or as your web browser or homepage, and also something else. And I unchecked them, but that bothers me when they check it for you.
But that's how they pay. That's how they pay to give it away free. Yeah. I mean, so there's just about every free system utility that you're going to get has those kinds of things built into it. So,
well, try it out. Again, Revision 3's Techzilla is recommending this, and also CNET has vetted it, and they give it a good rating as well. Let's move on to They Said It.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or HGH.
I took the initiative in creating the internet.
The Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
I'm not a crook.
If you know what you're doing here, slide out.
The Bible says that every eye is going to see. How is the whole world going to see all at one time? I don't know. Unless all of a sudden everybody's taking pictures and it's on the media worldwide. I don't know. Social media could have a big part in that. Franklin Graham explains how every eye might see Christ at his second coming. Source, AOL News.
Only if Chief Judge Walker had unequivocally disavowed any interest in marrying his partner could the parties and the public be confident that he did not have a direct personal interest in the outcome of the case. Attorneys for the coalition of religious and conservative groups that were originally responsible for getting Proposition 8 on the November 2008 ballot in California. They are now asking that Chief U.S. District Judge Von Walker's ruling, which struck down Proposition 8, be overturned because he was in a same-sex relationship and stood to benefit from his own ruling. Source, Associated Press.
We know who you are. You downloaded thousands of child porn images at 11:30 last night. FBI agents who stormed a home in Buffalo, New York, arresting and accusing a man of trafficking in child porn, only to find out later that the man was innocent. The man's Wi-Fi was unsecured, and someone else used it to download the illegal porn. Source, The Huffington Post.
Mr. Henn acknowledged to Strang his inappropriate relationship with the other minister. A lawsuit from Strang Communications, now Charisma Media, seeking $250,000 from Benny Hinn for violating the moral turpitude provision of his book contract when the evangelist was photographed in Rome with Paula White. Source, the Orlando Sentinel.
All right.
Where do we start?
Let's just go to the top.
Just make me mad. Go.
Franklin Graham has figured out how every eye is going to see him. It's Twitter and Facebook.
And Benny Hinn should have known that due to Twitter and Facebook, he can't go to Rome with Paula White. Keep it a secret.
It goes full circle in this week's They Said It.
Oh.
Yeah, this is really, it seems like a facepalm kind of moment for Franklin Graham. And it's like, I appreciated what Steve said in the pre-show. It's just like, stick to what you know, Franklin.
So this is not the way every eye is going to see him? I mean, how do we know? But we know the earth is round.
Jesus is going to turn on everybody's internet cam.
Right.
Their computer cameras.
What about for those who have not heard about the internet?
What about
of
those in Papua New Guinea's outback?
Exactly.
Suddenly, a laptop will appear. This is a miraculous sign. They'll be so busy playing Donkey Kong.
Surrounded by skeptics.
I love Franklin Graham, but really, this is a place where he needs to speak to what he knows and not get off on subjects that he doesn't know. One of the things in reading through the letters of C.S. Lewis that just struck me was his humility and his self-awareness of the limitations of his knowledge. One fellow wrote, kept pestering him about one question. And eventually, C.S. Lewis responds to him with this line, which is excellent. He says, I'm afraid this is a subject on which I need to be taught and not teach. And if we as pastors would just have the humility to say, I don't really know how that's going to happen, but I trust the God who has it all figured out, and I know that it's not going to be a mystery to him. He's not going to be rushing around at the last minute like we were this morning, trying to get Skype to work or something. It's going to happen, and everything else he said has been trustworthily proven to be true, so we can trust this too.
And just so people know, like a lot of big name ministers, celebrities have a Twitter account, but somebody else really does it for them. And everybody just ought to know this. I do speak from a knowledge here, but God's Twitter account is actually run by Gabriel. So, I mean, that's how it works. That's the person that is running God's Twitter account is Gabriel.
See, and this is why we brought Heath on the show, because Heath has knowledge that other people just don't have.
That's right.
And he can quote you chapter and verse from the Book of Mormon on that.
That's right. That's right.
This quote that Steve read, this was blowing up on the internet this week.
Yeah.
AOL News, Yahoo News, CNN, everyone had this. What's curious about this, Steve, am I right or wrong on this? I mean, you mentioned this to me months ago, that there was this inconsistency here.
Well, a conflict of interest for which any other judge would say, I'm sorry, even if I give a valid rendering of the law, it will be called into question. The credibility of the decision will be undermined.
Yes.
So I'm going to give it off to somebody who can make this decision. In whom I have confidence. He didn't do that, and it is difficult for me to see why he wouldn't have done that. I think in reading through his decision, as we went through it on a previous show, it is clear that he had an axe to grind with certain individuals. He went well beyond the scope of jurisprudential purview of this matter, and he, for the first time, put those of us who have a biblically shaped view of human sexuality, he put us in the crosshairs and outside of the protection of the law. He considers these people need to be protected from people like us, and that the law needs now to be designed with us as its target. Those who believe in the biblical centered view of a man and a woman constituting a marriage, he considers to be a threat to the well-being of society.
Yeah, if you've not seen the ruling, it's over 100 pages, so it takes you a while to go through it and to read the judge's ruling. But as you read through it, what becomes apparent is that anything, any documentation, any group that would suggest that same-sex unions are wrong, or would say that they've been successful in getting people out of same-sex relationships, in every case, categorically, those are dismissed.
Well, we're harmful. He said we are harmful to society. That puts us on the outside of the law, you understand. We're in the category now of the criminal and the others who are antisocial by very definition.
Yes.
But you told us something about coming back from Trinity after a class, or one of the times when you all were discussing, and you met there someone from Canada who has knowledge of people in Canada who've been sent to jail because of preaching against this lifestyle.
In one case, there's you have to understand the legislation. So if you speak against homosexuality in Canada, it is considered a hate. It's part of a hate crime, hate speech. And so that's outlawed. And so a minister spoke disparagingly of same-sex unions. And so there was someone in the congregation who complained to the local authorities. He was brought in, And so the way it's all filtered out now, or not filtered out, but the way it's set up is that the minister has to produce a transcript of his message every week. The judge reads that transcript, and he approves the message for the week. So whether or not it's an isolated case, it's an isolated case. There would be many Canadians who would say that is not representative of what's happening in Canada, and it's not. The point is that the law lends itself to that interpretation, and so you have this judge who is using it this way, and is not being challenged on it.
But it is being followed in that same way in other cases across Canada, and in Great Britain, the same thing is happening. We covered the street preacher to whom an undercover cop came up and kept asking him,
right.
do you or do you not think that homosexuality is incompatible with Scripture? And finally he said, I think homosexuality is, I think adultery is, and he listed a long line of things, and was arrested for it and went to jail. Now, those of us of an older generation who remember Pilgrim's Progress, written by John Bunyan, that fantastic allegory that talks about the Christian life from a person coming to hear the gospel, coming to Christ, and then the development of their faith. Most of us will remember that John Bunyan went to prison rather than to accept government oversight of his preaching. And his little girl lay at home dying. His precious little girl, the one that, because of her ill health, had been wound more tightly to his heart. And they came with a license saying, if you agree to allow us to tell you what you can and cannot preach, this license is signed. All you have to do is reach through the bars and take it. And he said to the guard after they had left, this is not an exact quote, this is almost a quote, though the gist is accurate. He said, if in a moment of weakness, and because of love for my daughter, my love for Christ should wane temporarily, and I began to reach through the bars, he had led this guard to the Lord, to take that license, he said, promise me in the name of Christ you'll take your sword from your side and cleave my arm from my body, lest I should defame him. That may be the stage to which things will return again. We're not permitted to pick and choose what we'll preach. Paul said, I've not shunned, King James, I've not refrained from giving you the whole counsel of God. And as ministers of the gospel, we are obligated to preach every point. Martin Luther said to uphold all the teaching of Scripture except that point which is most in contest in your day is not to uphold any of it.
The thing about it is Chief U.S. District Judge Vaughn Walker has really hurt his cause in not recusing himself from this case because of his situation. It's going to do more harm to his point of view and to the people fighting Proposition 8 than if
I think
not.
if you read the ruling, and so this is, I want us to be careful here that we're just not shooting off words. So I would encourage people, download it. You can get it in PDF form. Read the decision. It's going to take you a while. It's a 120, 130 page decision. But I think it becomes clear when you're reading it that Walker really does have an axe to grind.
And let me say this, too.
It's not why, let me finish here, it's not why the courts exist.
I mentioned last night to someone, we were having a conversation about this very issue, not about Judge Walker, but about the subject of homosexuality in the church. And I denounce and disassociate myself from anyone who would, by the standard of Scripture, try to say then we can treat homosexuals or adulterers or any other sinner as less human, as less precious in the sight of God. They too are created in the image and likeness of God. They too are targets of His grace. They too are worthy of our respect, our love, and our assistance. If they're hungry, they must be fed. If they're naked, they must be clothed. If they come to our church, they must be welcomed and made at some point to be a part of the fellowship of that body so that they can hear the gospel and come to know the precious Savior. The gospel is for such as these as well. Just all of us need it. There's none of us outside that scope of the gospel.
The church's attitude about this, in many cases, has not been helpful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've been hateful. We've been spiteful. And then we wonder why people on the other side of an issue don't like us. I can only see in Jesus' response to the woman taken in adultery, and I know there's some that argue about that passage, but I can only see consistent throughout his life. Even with Judas, when he knows Judas is coming to kill him, he uses a term of endearment, friend. Why have you come? Have you come to betray me? He's the one who would teach us by his example to reach out to everybody, make room for everyone.
Okay, so how about this guy in Buffalo, New York? Yeah, it's when you read this story, we link you to it.
And what's reading the story? This has happened a lot where people are. I'm fortunate because where we live, no one lives close enough to jump off our wireless router. But I do need TG to tell me how to set a password on it.
There's the problem.
Hey, right. but let me tell you, the dead vote in Chicago, they might be on your wireless there too.
Was this guy got grounds for a lawsuit against the Buffalo Police Department and FBI?
The story doesn't say. You're going to say,
Teach? So. Two things on this that just kind of rattle me. First of all, yeah, we need to know how to secure things. However, like what do you do at the church? Part of my goal at the church or at a public area is to have the availability for people to use that, and it's on all the time. So any neighbor in the church can do that. You can set up stuff, but you have to work at it. It's work to figure out the tools and the things that you need to be able to protect yourself. The whole IP address accusation irks me in that if you're going to say it was you who did this, you are at fault for this stuff that happened on your network. Well, that may not necessarily be the case, and just because it originated at that IP address doesn't mean that it was you. And that's what happened in this case. A neighbor got on this guy's Wi-Fi, was downloading illegal material, and they came to the house without even asking questions. They busted in the door basically and hauled him off.
Yeah,
for 3 days.
Here's how this works with the whole IP thing you're talking about. Heath could be sitting here during the whole show. He could be downloading illegal music, and the music industry could come after me because the IP, he's using my IP.
Yeah.
He could stay here the whole hour and do it. I would never know it, but it comes on me.
Because
way to go, Heath.
What's your IP address?
It was 3 songs.
Is the location of the router, the modem, whatever it is that's accessing the internet. So if you're on a cable thing, whatever that cable box is, if you use DSL, whatever that box is, that's got the IP address. Any computer that's using that box falls under the same IP address. And so, I mean, at the church, we have a multitude of computers, and I love it because I like looking at the access list and people who even come to church and bring tools with them to use during church and are able to get on the internet and use YouVersion apps on their stuff for their Bible and things like that. And it's this thing that we want to provide to people, but.
And you really do it well, too. I think you do it as well as any of the bigger churches of our area in what you offer your people. And certainly for the size of the congregation, they're blessed.
What I love is, like, on Sunday nights, I always take my notebook computer, have it opened up. I don't abuse that. I'm always following along with Scripture and stuff like that. But there have been times, Matthew will say, ask me to look something up during the service. Someone will ask a question. He'll say, I don't know, and I'll look it up. I think it's taking advantage of the technology, and I think he brings up a great point. This is where the church can be a ministry, have an open Wi-Fi, but as Matthew said, you got to curate that. You got to vet things. You have to go behind. I mean, when he first set that up, and he was checking things, there were hits for porn sites and stuff just from people who might drive up in the parking lot and exit. But that went down after a while because he continued to curate it and went back to it, and people just realized, well, I'm not going to be able to get to the nefarious website I wanted to through this open network.
Didn't you one time use Google Earth in showing people where cities were.
Oh yeah, in fact, I've been doing that here recently. We've been going through the book of Genesis, and I can't remember the name of it now, but I need to look it up for you guys because it's really cool. But there's this guy who's taken biblical locations throughout the whole Bible and has put together a Google Earth file where you can go to book and chapter, and any area that it talks about in that chapter, it will pinpoint that on Google Earth. So we've been talking about Abram's move out from and around the Fertile Crescent and then down to Egypt, and to be able to show people what it really looked like, because it all happens in a verse.
If you can't, even if you can't download that would make a great link of the week or download of the week.
You can download it. It's what's called a KML file that you open up in Google Earth, and then it's just this folder that's got then subfolders as the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and then each chapter that mentions a location that pinpoints.
Yeah, we need to do that for download of the week.
It's really neat.
He took us to a dig that was going on in the area where it's believed that Abraham came from. So Google Earth zoomed down.
The ziggurat foundations there, and where old, I mean, so this ancient city that they're uncovering from the time of Abram when he would have left the city of Ur. It's really cool.
Now, do they have the Spanish section of Ur too? So that
I know we're running late. We got to talk about this Benny Hinn deal.
What are you going to say about it?
I don't know.
The prophet?
I don't know.
Here's my thing. You guys heard my rant in the pre-show. The church doesn't have to worry about people who are throwing rocks from the outside, because we produce enough of our own garbage to keep the press cranking out.
Right.
And that's what I feel about this story. It's sad.
Here, I don't know, man. I just sometimes I feel like ministerial standards have just been thrown out the window. Like, I am all for. I have several friends who are divorced, who are in ministry, and I think you have to take that on a case-by-case basis. But I think it just seems like, and we said this in pre-show, like, the bigger you get in ministry and you got this worldwide deal, it's like you don't have to have valid ground. You just, Paula White and her husband just basically decided,
It was God's will for them to get a divorce. That was their thing. We talked about that.
But it's always been this way. I mean, look, you have Caiaphas and the others of Jesus' day who would represent this power, prestige, and pelf or wealth. And it's always been that way. We serve as a contradiction to that, or we're supposed to in our lives. You can say, well, I'm not as big and I don't have a platform, but the people of your community know you. They see you. They watch you. And if they hear in us integrity, if they see in us the values that we preach, if there's something of Christ that is projected in everything we do, they may not believe Benny Hinn, and they'll still talk about the Benny Hinns.
Right.
But when their child is sick and can't get better, when they've got the bad report from the doctor, when the mill closes down, they'll know at least there's one person in their community that's in touch with God and loves them, in touch with them.
Right.
And that's just who we have to be. There's no other way to get this done. It's all about divine relationships. And we're not perfect people. We make mistakes. We fail. But my goodness.
And I apologize if I'm throwing rocks at Benny Hinn and Paula White, but for me, it just, in my mind and in my heart, it just makes me more keenly aware of just not just the standard that God has for me as a pastor, as a man, as a husband, as a father, but the fact that literally, Google Earth. You could Google Earth me, and if I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong person doing the wrong thing, it's going to hurt a lot more than just my reputation.
That's right.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, we're not throwing rocks here, but let's go back to the whole issue of homosexuality. And here's a case where the church often is so condemning, and yet we look at something like this and we're a little upset by it. But, I mean, I just see these things as equal.
Absolutely.
And that's what frustrates me. And I want to, if I could have Paula White and Benny Hinn before me, I would just say, listen, do you understand that at the end of the day, this is not about you, but it's about the name of Christ, and it's about a world that looks on us and says qualitatively, you're no different.
Yeah. And how do they how are they responding? That would be my other question too. Are they responding with real remorse and the realizing the impact of what they've done?
But
or is it a thing where they're too proud to be able to do that?
That's my point. You can't make Caiaphas repent. You can't produce that. The only contradiction to this false image of the religion of Christ is authentic Christians. It's the only thing.
Yeah, good point.
Do we preach
Good
against
point.
it, speak against it? I've been preaching and speaking against Benny Hinn's nonsense for a long, long time. He was interviewed by an Orlando Sentinel reporter down there, and the guy said, if you can heal everybody and do all this stuff, why don't you heal your hair? And Benny Hinn cursed him. And I don't mean swore at him. I mean he put a curse on him. He said they made fun of the prophet of God in the Old Testament, and a she-bear came out, and I forget what the actual curse was, but he was wishing that bad things would follow upon this man's life, and the guy to this day is healthy and still.
You ever had the thought that Donald Trump and Benny Hinn have the same hair guy? How about that? See? It was revelatory.
I'm going to need to see Donald Trump and Benny Hinn, their barber. I'm going to need to see his certificate of cosmetology.
There we go. Okay, let's end up by talking about Mickey Nielsen. He's finally come up with a great alternative fuel. It's bourbon. This man lives in Louisville, Kentucky, 62 years old, and he's got a car that runs on good old Kentucky bourbon. And guess what his inspiration is? The movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Oh, my goodness.
But I'm looking at this car.
I was going to guess the
If you get hit by a bicycle, you're going to the hospital in this thing.
Well, come on now. What are you doing to solve the fuel problem, huh, Heath? I mean, at least he's further down the road. No pun intended.
I don't know.
Well.
All right, we got to wrap this thing up, man.
All right.
Wrap it
Let's
up.
make
I
it
think
happen.
embalm it.
Yeah.
All right. Just to remind you that next week we'll have Zach Woodfin with us. He's the assistant strength coach for the Green Bay Packers. Really looking forward to that. May the 11th, Dr. David Spittle will be in studio. He is retiring from Southern Wesleyan University. May the 18th, Aaron Gadsby will be in studio. We will also have pre-recorded something from Dr. Norman Wilson from Indiana Wesleyan University. This is not the Norman Wilson of the Wesleyan Hour.
Yeah. Because we are the new Wesleyan Hour. I'm just going to say it. We are the Wesleyan Hour.
That's right.
That would scare some people, Matthew.
And then the next 2 weeks, we've got great. Next week, I'm giving away the Green Bay Packers Super Bowl DVD. And then when Dr. Spittle's in, we're giving away 4 years of tuition.
Okay, sir, there are times that a show needs to disavow comments and say that it doesn't necessarily represent.
I didn't say to where or to what.
I think we could almost swing tuition to the Wesleyan Seminary, though. My goodness, wasn't that reasonable?
Oh, wow.
I'm telling you.
Time.
How are they? They're losing money.
Yeah. All right. And then on May the 25th, we have Kevin Beers back with us to talk to us about ministry to college students. Heath, where can our listeners find you on the internet?
If they go to chaseyourline.com, it hasn't been updated in a while, but from there they can find me on Facebook and Twitter and all that good stuff.
All right. Matthew?
You can find me at twitter.com/C, the number 2, the letter T, and the letter S.
All right. Steve?
I don't think I can be found anymore, but I have a presence still, oldsuit.wordpress.com, and it hasn't been updated in a month or so.
All right. Frankie, where can our listeners find you on the internet?
Greenville, South Carolina.
Could you say that
Facebook
in Spanish?
and Greenville, Carolina del Sur. I'm on Facebook or email or anywhere.
All right. All right. And you can find me at facebook.com/AKC64. We want to thank you again for joining us. And if you want to do any further research on anything we discussed today, you can find all the links to the stories we covered at our website, thetechologyshow.com. If you want to contact us, send your emails to the Techology Show at gmail.com. And TG, we still have a Kindle edition floating out there.
It is. Leave us a question or a comment. Hey, I'll broaden it out. It doesn't have to be about. Yes, it does. It has to be on the Todd Burpo Show. Go watch that. Leave a question or a comment, and you can win a free copy of Heaven is for Real. I'm giving it away, and it's instantaneous. There's no post office involved with this one. It's not going to get lost in the mail.
That's right.
It'll happen like that.
Newman.
Thanks again for joining us. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Adios.
Oh, okay. Sorry for